you can't even for the moment appreciate it. And I realized his pessimism wasn't about reality. His pessimism was an inability to appreciate. It was a perceptual problem. It wasn't a reality problem. It was a problem with how we perceived reality. And then in all of those cases afterwards, you can look back on it and go, yeah, there was hope, but there was never possibility. Because reality, especially future reality, contradicts that hope. I guess the question becomes, what's the alternative? You could say, well, then just accept reality, but you don't know what reality is. Hoping is a desire for what reality is going to be. It's a reality that none of us know what it's going to be like. What's your future going to be like? I know that your future in some way is going to be shaped by hope. Everybody who's here, I imagine you're probably hoping that you're going to have a worthwhile life, a life of meaning, a life of purpose, but not everybody is. But you're hoping for it. You're all here right now because you're hoping for something, and why else would you be in school? What are we doing here? Oh, I don't know, because I have a better future in some way that we don't really understand. Why would being here give us a better future? We don't know. But we hope that it will. All of those things are all hopes. And they're not bad things, because without hope, what would you do? So the doctors were telling you, he's got a 5% chance to live.
I would hope for that 5% chance.
Yeah, so there's a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when my mom had a heart attack and she went into a coma. She never came out of it, how she died. The doctor was going over the charts with me. It was one of those unfortunate situations where I was pretty young, and my dad was, my whole family was kind of like, well, you're the smart one, so you make all the decisions. So if you think you're having a bad day, imagine being 21 years old and having to make the decisions about your mom, whether she's going to live or die. And I was going over the charts with the doctor, and he's explaining the severity of the heart attack, what her vitals and everything. And then he asked me, let me ask you, did your mom smoke? I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, well then your mom's going to die. Just like that. And he said, if not, then her heart would probably be strong enough, because it wasn't like a massive heart attack. It was just, one that most people will survive. And she's only 54 years old. And so he said, but if she smoked, then yeah, her heart won't be strong enough to survive this. And I said, okay. And what kind of a percentage would you give? And that's why I mentioned that 5%, because he said, I'm at 5%. And I said, okay, so there is a chance. And he said, no. He said, medically, we're not supposed to go below 5%. So 5% is kind of equal to 0 in those kinds of, in those contexts. So I thought, okay, so she's not going to come out of this. And he's like, no. So once you hear that, then, and he said, by the way, even if she does come out of it, she's going to have to learn how to walk again. She's going to have to learn how to talk again. She's never going to be the same. She's going to lose cognitive abilities. So even if she comes out, you won't recognize her. She won't be the same person. And so I was like, okay. And what are the chances of her ever regaining those things? And he said, if she survives the 5%, about 5%, she'll regain those things. So which is basically them just saying there's no hope, there's no chance. And so you can still say, well, but there's always hope. You can hope for that. But that kind of goes back to what you're saying, that hope at that point it's an empty vessel. It's a word that we use to just encapsulate our wants or our desires. In that case, it's not even something that you could work towards. It isn't like you could say, well, let's bring in some more doctors and put some more doctors on this. There's just no way of coming out of that. And you can see that in, I guess, a couple of different ways. One way is you could say, well, there's a sense of closure that's there. Because one of the things that hope does is it lingers, and it kind of leads you on in some circumstances. She was, I ended up having to make the decision to take her off of life support, and the doctor said she'll be dead within 24 to 48 hours. So I was like, okay. So I was at the hospital. She didn't. She hung out for 3 weeks off of life support. And the doctors just said, well, that's an impossibility. So then if that doesn't mess with your head, nothing will. Because you start going through your head well, that's an impossibility. but it was also an impossibility that she'd ever come out of it, and it was also an impossibility that she was ever going to regain those cognitive functions. And just as you start to get all those things through your head, that's when she finally died. And so you can see hope in that sense as like almost like a leading you on, because for 3 weeks you're sitting there thinking like, not yet. Well, maybe, and it would have been better, perhaps. Not perhaps. It certainly probably would have been better at 24 hours, 6 hours. Certainly not 3 weeks, man. That's a long time. It's a long time. So you can see hope in that way. Because hope, as he says, it contradicts the future. What was the future in that case? She died. She died. Same as we all will. But in that meantime, there was a hoping that was there. And especially when you find yourself in a state of hope, you can start to see the things that you want to see. You can see if you're hoping that your alcoholic father is going to change, you're going to see some of those bright moments of when it seems like he's really going to change. If you're hoping that your mom is going to come out of the coma, you're going to see those those moments of when it seems like she's reacting, when in actuality it's just like a physical response, like a spasm or something like that, and you think it's more than just that. When you hope that person is actually going to text you back, and you can read the few messages you get and go, no, it does seem like it's something possible. And then in all of those cases afterwards, you can look back on it and go, yeah, there was hope, but there was never possibility. Because reality, especially future reality, contradicts that hope. But I guess the question becomes, what's the alternative? You could say, well, then just just accept reality, but you don't know what reality is. Hoping is a desire for what reality is going to be. It's a reality that none of us know what it's going to be like. What's your future going to be like? I know that your future in some way is going to be shaped by hope. Everybody who's here, I imagine you're probably hoping that you're going to have a worthwhile life, a life of meaning, a life of purpose, but not everybody is. But you're hoping for it. You're all here right now because you're hoping for something, and why else would you be in school? Like, what are we doing here? Oh, I don't know, because I have a better future in some way that we don't really understand. Like, why would being here give us a better future? We don't know. But we hope that it will. In a couple of years, some of you will be going off to college, and you might be hoping that, if I go to college, it's going to give me a better life, a life that I desire. Perhaps, bless you. Some of you are going to meet somebody, maybe get married, may have children, and all of those things are all hopes. And they're not bad things, because without hope, what would you do? I really mean that, because some people really don't have a lot of hope, and you can see it in how they live. You wouldn't invest money, that's for sure. You wouldn't buy stocks, you wouldn't buy houses, you wouldn't buy things that could create a better future for you, because you wouldn't have hope in the future. I guess what I'm saying is that, you need hope to live. Without it, you're not really, I guess there's a biological existence mostly, but man, there's nothing worthwhile living. Even getting onto an airplane. Anybody ever fly? A lot of hope. It's a lot of trust. And so hope is not a bad thing. I look at a guy like this, and I think about that date. He was born in 1911, dies in 1995. He lived a long time, man, 84 years. And to say something like this, did anybody look this guy up? I ask you from time to time, you really should once in a while, find out some things about these people. This guy here, how do I say it? Maybe for better or worse, but he's a really well-known philosopher in modern times, as far as modern philosophers go. And this statement from him is pretty representative of most of the kinds of things that he thinks. This guy was an incredible pessimist. This guy would talk about suicide, and people would ask him, why, if you really do think this, if you really have such a dark view of the future, why don't you just kill yourself? And he says, I don't care enough to live or die. That was his answer. And when you hear something like that, if you're thoughtful, I'm sorry, I guess if you're like a sixth grader sitting in your room, you might think like, yeah, because that's how I feel. But as soon as you get a few years older and you start thinking about it, you probably are, that meme of the little kid in the car seat going, bullshit? Bullshit. You really think things are gonna be that dark? Bullshit. Because if you did, how did you make it to 84 years old? What were you doing every day except for hoping that tomorrow is going to be better? And if you are a pessimist, if you have a darker personality, but you maintain that hope, like, yeah, I think things are bad today, that's why I'm a pessimist. Yeah, I think things are, I'm miserable today, I'm sad today, that's why I have a dark personality, but I hope tomorrow's better. I'm open to the idea of it. And then if it is, you'll be able to actually grasp it and appreciate it. And I think that might be something that we can consider with ideologies like this, that in order for things to be better, you have to be open to the possibility that they can be. I was talking in my last period about someone who used to teach here. He's not here anymore, he retired. And he was such a pessimist. I remember he would complain about his schedule all the time. He taught history here. And one time I asked him, like, what would your perfect schedule look like? What would it be? And he told me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And what it pretty much was just whatever he didn't have. That was what the better schedule would be. And then the master schedule came out, and it was exactly what he told me like a month earlier he wanted for the following year. And I sent him a message and said, dude, you got the schedule you said you wanted. And he messaged me back and said, yeah, but they'll probably screw me over next year, or the following year. Like, you can't even, like, for the moment, appreciate it. And I realized his pessimism wasn't about reality. His pessimism was an inability to appreciate. It was a perceptual problem. It wasn't a reality problem. It was a problem with how we perceived reality. And this guy, he lived a long life. The guy was successful in his field. The guy made a good amount of money doing it. He had all of those things going for him. And you can have all of those things going for you and still feel like you're missing something. That's not the point. The point is that having all of those things should maybe give us a bit of hope to say, maybe tomorrow will be better. But you can't say that unless you're open to it being better, so that when something good does come your way, you can appreciate it. And actually, I guess, take a moment to enjoy it. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfect, of course, nothing. In fact, it isn't even that everything's not going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be perfect, because nothing is perfect. But you have to recognize that just as it's not perfect doesn't mean it's not all bad either. It can't be both. Life doesn't exist to these extremes. There's gradations in between. To be able to appreciate the bad, but also to appreciate the good as well. And the more the good that you can appreciate, I don't know, maybe the less you're going to end up looking like this. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah, happy Wednesday.